Good evening and welcome to another edition of Tok Piksa. In any sector of public service delivery, the main yardstick to measure performance is reliability. In the power generation and supply sector, reliability and efficiency are paramount to keeping customers happy. Tonight, we feature an exclusive interview with PNG Power Chief Executive Officer John Tangit. And while Mr. Tangit acknowledges the cries of frustrated citizens whenever there is an unscheduled power outage, he also explains to us that reliability comes at a high price. Mr. Tangit, welcome to Tok Piksa.
Thank you, Neville.
Now, sir, in any sector of public service delivery, the main yardstick that's measured is reliability.
Yes.
And reliability is what customers expect.
Yes.
Now, obviously, reliability with regards to power generation and supply depends on a variety of factors.
Yes.
Now, later on this evening, you will be discussing these factors with me.
Yes.
But first, let's put into perspective where PNG Power and the supply of electricity today is with our consumers and our public. When there is constant supply, you don't hear anything because everybody's happy. But when we have unexpected power outages, you hear everybody screaming all over the neighborhood. Now, a lot of people don't truly understand the mechanics of what it takes to provide constant electricity supply to the whole country. From your desk as the CEO of PNG Power Limited, do you hear the cries of frustrated people and consumers? And how do you respond to that proactively?
Thank you. Neville, it's a challenge. Certainly for the energy sector and for that matter, power, reliability comes with a price, and a huge price, because in the power sector, in the power industry, it's all hardwire connected business. And for that matter, like PNG Power, which is vertically integrated in terms of from power generation to transmission and distribution, then on to the retail aspects of it, which is customer service front, more or less. So the commercial part of it is towards the end. The bottom part of it is more generation, transmission, distribution, more technical in nature, and that is where huge cost is built around it. So reliability comes with also availability of equipment. So if equipment are old and are not available, then reliability levels are not guaranteed. And for that matter, it comes with a capital expenditure program that's not only to give the nameplate rating over aging assets, because with aging assets, like a rundown house, you need to renovate it to upkeep the value. So as our generating assets, we need to also renovate them and upgrade them if need be. Upgrading meaning you put more copper, more steel onto the windings in order to give more output out of the generator. But for that matter, when it comes to nameplate rating, our capital expenditure is more centered around nameplate rating of our existing asset. And that's the challenge we have, because given the economic impact on LNG and growth currently faced in PNG on average, it's like 6% across the country. And if we are not, it's a catch-up game for PNG Power. So if it's 6% last year and it's 6% again this year, where do we get the money to basically reinforce our existing assets so as going into the green fields? So we are now thinking outside of the box, and we're trying to go IPP in terms of generation. IPP is independent power producer. So on the generation front, we are looking outside of the box now in order to get support and participation from public-private partnership initiatives, so as the independent powers coming in. But then there's got to be a demand for us to basically bring that on board. And that is why it comes to the gateway of us asking for tariff.
Now, you mentioned catch-up. Has it always been a problem for PNG Power to maintain these services, or have other factors like population, like demand, had a lot to say about it?
Yes.
And where does funding come into this all?
Basically, we've been a very good company, and we thank the government. We've basically stood on the strength of our balance sheet. And since 2001, PNG Power is basically, with the introduction of ICCC on board, that has given the benefit in terms of regulatory to give us some tariff increase. And we've survived, basically. And that gave the strength of our balance sheet with the tariff increase for us to go out and source funds within the country. And we're proud to say part of our refurbishment exercise on the existing asset has been through a syndicate of banks led by BSP. And we've done pretty well. Like the benefit we enjoy in Port Moresby currently, it's because of a refurbishment funded by the syndicate of Rona 2 hydropower plant. And we are currently now extending that to Yonkito of the dam, so as with Ramo 1 power station, which is currently in progress.
So refurbishment is an ongoing process for PNG Power? Very
much so, yes, Neville.
Is there an end in sight? Is there any time that we can say there will be efficient power supply countrywide?
Yes, with the anticipation of us having gas on board, that will be the least cost generation means. So we look forward to that era when gas is available. Currently, we are limited to a fact that we have very minimum gas that can be made available, but that depends on us, how we go about with the LNG.
Okay. Now, with regards to providing service and reliability, of course, that all rests on the rate that of purchasing that you have with regards to fuel and other factors that you need to generate power.
Yes.
This is where tariffs come into play.
Yes.
Could you just walk us through that, please?
Okay. Tariff basically comes into play because with this staggering growth, we have what we call historical performance cost. That's about fuel, how the trend of fuel has been over the last 12 months or the last quarter. We are now doing it on a quarterly basis with ICCC. So how we have performed over fuel prices over, and it's that cost which we have suffered that we factor onto, and that's also growth onto the business. So that is one aspect of it is the fuel cost. The other influential factor is also the CPI, the price of goods and services. You'll also have to pay for the logistics behind moving fuel from here to there. So all this lumps up to a certain price per kilowatt hour.
You're watching Tok Piksa. We've heard about the reason why we may be experiencing more blackouts now than in recent years. Age-old infrastructure and historical performances are some of the biggest challenges that PNG Power faces yearly. Tariffs, although a positive revenue-raising measure for PPL, is usually the most contested amongst power consumers. But there's more to tariffs that we as consumers do not realize. Mr. Tungit explains this further. The ordinary consumer only sees how much they have to pay when they go and purchase EasyPay units, or they go and settle a bill.
Yes.
How can you make it clear for them with regards to, say, a liter of fuel and how much power that generates?
Yes. At the Bowser, it's about 320 per liter. So for us, given the volumes that we purchase out of respective fuel suppliers and outlets, we can basically get something about 3 kina, and because we're getting the volumes, but then there's also other costs in terms of logistics, and as you know, PNG Power carries one aspect of our duty is also to serve the underlying communities across PNG, and I'm referring to the places like Finsafen, places like Maprik, Aitape. I mean, that's CSO, Community Service Obligation. And, you know, with due respect to the government, that is where PNG Power basically subsidizes all these diesel-fired centers, because the budget, operational budget for fuel is pretty big. It's almost a third of PNG Power's operations budget.
1/3 is a significant amount of an operational budget.
It is.
So, is there an end in sight to probably looking at alternative sources or cheaper fuel?
Yes, we are now contemplating. We're doing initial feasibility and plan to basically introduce solar in those centers. So during the day, there's going to be an hybrid system coupled with the diesel-fired engines. So during the day, the solar takes over, and during the night, the diesel engines come on. We'd like to call that a hybrid system.
Is that already being piloted, or how soon can we see that?
That's piloted in several parts in Australia, and we're trying to introduce that, like places like Samarai, Finsafen, Maprik, Aitape.
And the infrastructure to go with this addition in alternative supply in the outlying areas, is there much infrastructure, or is it a setup, or just a small hybrid setup?
It's just a small hybrid setup. Yes, it will cover a little bit of land, and in places like Samarai, we've got land that's available. We have few setups over in Samarai, so we can be able to hybrid it very easily.
Recently, we heard of tariff increases. You've just spoken to us and walked us through the mechanics of calculating tariffs. What's the next step? Do we really need to see an increase? And what of the government's assistance of 10 million kina subsidy?
The 10 million is only 1/5 of what we anticipate if we were given the go-ahead to raise that fund through the tariff increase. 10 million, as I've explained earlier, it's capital intensive, our business. And 10 million is only a tip of what we anticipate to collect. 10 million will only go for a month in terms of a bill that we pay to Kanudi. But we are taking that with both arms because it's a government directive.
Okay.
And we are reassessing our internal operational performances, where we can cut costs, where we can basically outsource if we have to outsource certain aspects of our business, so that we can be able to see if we can generate and save money, and also generate some revenue from some of our services we provide.
Okay. Now, the responsibility of trying to save money and trying to keep costs down is not supposed to be just borne by PNG Power. There are things that consumers can contribute to help the situation.
Thanks, Neville. Very much. The onus is also on consumers. When they have to control the usage of power, they'll have to. And also from a perspective of illegal connections, I'd like to appeal in this forum that please refrain from doing illegal connections, because you are not helping anybody else. We as a country must all mobilize ourselves. If we want to cooperate and work together, we need to see where we can save in terms of power usage, because the more power we try to use and we just have the lights on, or if there's an unwanted item which in the house that you don't need to power and you've got it, like if the TV is running, you might as well switch it off when nobody's watching.
The issue of illegal connections, we've seen the consequences of illegal connections. That's resulted in sometimes death for people who have been electrocuted through those. What's the financial problems with illegal connections? How much of a bite does it take out of PPL's operations?
Thank you, Neville. It's quite a painful bite. Certain insurance aspects end up in huge sums of money. Yes, certainly it's also a pain. I mean, despite us paying some insurance money, still it's a big loss to the community and the country in terms of population. And I don't want to see PNG Power being responsible to electrocution because of some illegal connections. And there's always a cover-up in rural areas, because somebody who really doesn't appreciate safety and standards, which I'm emphasizing very strongly, could just say, here is a wire connected without knowing whether that conductor or that wire basically is standard, and it can carry the right amperage and the right voltage. Without appreciation and consideration of such, people just connect, and then eventually we have a situation where electrocution comes. And also the standards in terms of how we dress up poles and how do we carry the conductors and supply into respective homes. And innocently, an innocent child playing around gets electrocuted, and that's sad. Is a future statistic to PNG's population.
You're watching Tok Piksa. Alternative energy sources are something that PNG Power has been canvassing, And whilst water and hydropower generators are our biggest assets, PPL is also looking into hybrid solar-powered units to run parallel to current diesel-powered stations. Now, the issue of illegal connections brings up issues of standards which you have mentioned. That applies strictly in urban centers. How much of it actually is being heeded to out in the outlying areas outside of urban centers?
In terms of rural areas, we have a rural services directorate, and they are responsible for rural electrification. Now, when they're constructing a line or from an high voltage or a low voltage line, low voltage is the line that basically supplies the consumer. High voltage is the transmitting line that basically brings the high voltage closer to the customer, and the low voltage delivers it to the customer. There is a requirement by way of standard that they've got to construct that distribution line to the specifications of a standard as per design, and then they deliver. And the lines won't be commissioned and powered up unless they comply to those standards.
Okay.
So all in all, I'd say it has to be right to the customer. So when the customer signs on, he signs on what I call a technical agreement, so is a commercial agreement in terms of purchasing power. And the technical agreement covers the standards that it's connected to.
Okay, all right. Which leads me to the next question with regards to supplying power to rural areas. PNG Power and a rural electrification program. Could you just tell our viewers where we are with that? I take, for example, New Ireland. We'd like to know more about how the agreements are done or arranged between PNG Power and, say, the local member for KVN or for a district in New Ireland who wants to roll out rural electrification or power poles down the highway.
Neville, I'll take us back to my earlier remark in terms of capital intensive company that we run. So basically, it's a budget item that any government, whether it be a national government, provincial government, or district government, they come with a budget that they say this is the amount of money.
Okay.
And they say they want the power to be connected from here to there, A to B. But that's not the money that has been scoped out in terms of the project. And that is why we are not getting much of coverage or kilometers in terms of construction. So basically what I'm saying here is the money that is budgeted and given to us is not the real total sum of the project.
Okay.
For a turnkey solution. You just come and here is it, here's your power within this project period of time. So basically the processes in terms of rural services we undertake, first of all, we need to carry out what they call an investigation of the site, of the route, as well as doing a survey, getting a engineering surveyor in there to survey the route.
Right.
And then we come up with what they call a bill of quantities for design. Or we design and then we come up with a bill of quantities to basically give us the amount of money that the project should take.
Okay.
So it's like putting the chicken, putting the egg and chicken situation, I'll say.
Okay.
And which one we have first. We have the money first and then we don't know what we're going to deliver. So I think we got to scope everything out first, and that is why it's important that we start looking at benchmarking, and PNG Power now is embarking on benchmarking energy needs across the country.
Okay.
And
so you'll be able to say who needs how much energy,
exactly,
and at what cost, and with what infrastructure.
Exactly,
okay.
Exactly.
Right.
And infrastructure in terms of what generation source for least cost.
Okay, that brings me to my next question. What have we found out so far in terms of alternate sources of energy that we can capitalize on as a country?
Well, our country is shaped like this, and we've got a lot of rivers and streams. The least cost generation means, if we were to compare orange with orange from a least cost generation perspective,
yes,
it's hydro. First, because that's available now. But hydros are very capital intensive. But if we have gas available now, gas would be the best. Because we don't have big overheads in terms of setting up gas-fired power plants.
Okay.
It's just one site. You just do the little bit of civil works, and you have a gas plant which comes in cubicles, and you lock them in, connect them up, and off we go. Okay. Unlike in hydro, you need to do feasibility, you need to do the geotechnical, you need to do the civil structures, which is almost 2/3 of the cost. Mm-hmm. The electrical, mechanical would be 1/3 of the cost. Mm-hmm. And yes, the hydros are real capital intensive. But in terms of operation, least cost.
Okay. Is there any time in the near future we'll see, say, a province who has a lot of water and can utilize hydro, actually going into hydro and moving away from diesel-powered generators for power supply?
We are looking forward for two new gas turbines coming into our fleet of generating equipment in the country, and that's courtesy of the government. When those two gas turbines come in, they will be used as what we call in the power sector redundancy in terms of our generation levels. That will give us a benefit for some time. Then we are aggressively pursuing the narrow brown outside Port Moresby, okay. And we're also talking to Water PNG and Edorano to basically come on board to give them, having pressure water coming out of an hydro plant like narrow brown. We'd like them to also participate. So it's basically harnessing all utility sectors and drawing them on board. And that's one project that we are looking forward for. Now that our good honorable governor for NCD has moved the Buai market out, it's now forcing us to start constructing line down narrow brown, basically to give that construction load we require for that power plant. Okay. Feasibility, it's in final stage now at narrow brown, and we're excited about that project. And it will be an 80 megawatt project when we complete it.
So the future of power in PNG, positive, would you say?
Positive, yes. If we can be able to look at the generation space, because much of the cost, that operational cost that PNG Power carries today is borne by the generating space of our business.
Okay.
The T&D are fixed line items and fixed assets. All we need to do is just improve upgrade the conductors, upgrade the switch gears, and the structure stays.
Now, looking ahead, 2015 next year, big year for PNG. Pacific Games are here. Can we get a guarantee from you that by 2015 we won't have people screaming when there's a blackout?
By 2015, with the two gas turbines here, people won't be screaming. We've got our shareholder IPBC also helping us out in terms of reinforcement in our transmission sector in Port Moresby. We've got Asian Development Bank, who are good partners. We've got JICA, who's also helping to give us another additional circuit into Leh on the transmission front. And we've signed up a power purchase agreement for Leh with Daewoo International of Korea, South Korea. And we are looking at within 13 months, or I'll say 15 months, Leh will be all right. We won't be having any more screaming customers out of Leh.
Okay.
Madang, we are looking at having two additional 2.5 megawatts into Madang to give them raise the generating availability in Leh to about 10 megawatts.
Okay.
And our crash will be the past.
Okay.
But certainly we need to rock the boat now, and it's good that the customers are complaining, because that will give us the benefit to now start doing some real work to satisfy the customers, and it's their right.
PNG Power will always be the face of power supply in the country, but the responsibility of saving power should rest on all of us. Illegal connections take a big bite out of PPL's revenue measures and is an unnecessary human hazard. Likewise, there are more intricacies in the process of opening new areas of power supply in the country. Tok Piksa will be speaking to Mr. Tangit and PNG Power every month. Hopefully, this will result in more awareness, more understanding, and more efficient power supply throughout our country. Until next time on Tok Piksa, good night.